Well, we've gotten the tractor all back together, the Farmall Cub 1948, and then we're at the tail end of our restoration, and it looks beautiful. Everything turned out great. I'm still thinking about sanding down the hood again and trying the paint job again because it's kind of has an orange peel finish, and I don't like that much. It should be a lot smoother and shinier. So I'm going to work on that eventually. But for now, a couple days ago, we put it all back together, put the hood on it, and we're fixing to get it started. And I went in for lunch and came back out, and there was water leaking out of several of the manifold exhaust and intake holes. So that was all bolted on, so the water was coming out the carburetor. And it wasn't just a little drip now and then, it was quite a bit of water actually. And this is kind of the problem this tractor had 2 years ago when I took it apart. And I was thinking that the engine rebuild would take care of whatever problem that was, maybe a head gasket or a cracked block or a cracked or warped head. I bought a do-it-yourself Magnaflux system of materials and used that on both the block and the head, and could not find any obvious cracks that could generate that much water. So the fact that the water was coming out here and it was actually leaking, you could see it seeping out of the gasket here, which tells me the leak is hopefully up above that. And if that's the case, probably I just need to replace the head and the head gasket and maybe the head bolts. And I just need to test that each head bolt isn't bottoming out in the block. And so when I reach my torque, I'm actually torquing the bolt, not just reaching the end of the hole. So there's some things to look at, and I've been going back and forth. It's either the head or it's the block. There's a crack and water is from the water jackets leaking into the rest of the system. If that's the case, if it's the block, then this is a start over, at least on the engine. We'd have to tear the engine out, tear it down, get a different block, or see if we can fix the block that we have, and then put it all back together again, which means, I don't know if I can just reuse the bearings, maybe so. Certainly the rings haven't been used yet. I mean, they're in there, but they haven't really been used, been no explosions in cylinders. So could probably reuse all of that, maybe just, if I have to swap out the block, then maybe valve guides and valves have to be replaced. So we'll see about all that. I'm hoping it's the head so that I don't have to tear this whole thing apart, because that's going to set this project back several months, and I really don't want to do that. I've got a tractor show that I'm planning on taking this tractor to that's featuring Farmalls this year, and it's over in Brooks, Oregon at the end of July. So my whole time frame on this was to get it up and running and functional to take it to that show. So what I'm going to do is decided I'm going to take the head off, because it's obviously leaking in there, and see if I can find anything obvious. And I'm going to start with that. I might even get another head or a new head and put that on here. Every time I take the head off, I think it costs me a new head gasket potentially. So, we'll see. Maybe I can reuse the one that's in there because it hasn't really been used yet, although it has been torqued. So, I don't know about that. I'll look that up. So I'm going to take out the spark plugs. I'm going to take off the governor throttle rod. Going to take off the hose spout here to the radiator top end. I'm going to take off the air cleaner, and then I'm going to take off this head, and we'll look in there and see what we see. So I'll get back to you when I have all that completed. here just in a few minutes. All right, I've taken off all the bolts, took off the air cleaner and the upper radiator assembly, and I can see water sitting on top of valves when I look up under here. But let's lift this off and see what we have underneath. Of course, I made an assumption it would just pop right off. All right, hang on a minute. This isn't just coming off. All right, I had to gently put a screwdriver underneath here and break the seal. Yeah. All right. So it's not really clear where this problem is arising, but we'll look at the cylinder here in a second. All right. Let me get behind this camera here and get a good look at what's going on top of our cylinder here. We just got water all over the place. So the first thing I'm going to do is see if the head gasket was put in correctly. And then if that looks like it's where it's supposed to be, then we're going to have to just think about, well, is the head no good or is the block no good? What exactly is going on here? So there's a number of things that I'll be testing to see what really is going on. You can see there's lots of water in every single cylinder and around every single valve. That tells me, well, I think it tells me that, you know, it's not like there's a crack in a cylinder somewhere where it's leaking, because it would just leak in the one area and it'd only come out one of these, but we've got water everywhere. So that tells me there's a much larger problem going on here. So I'm going to putter around and look at this, and then if I find anything interesting, I'll turn the camera on again. All right, so I've got the head gasket off, and you can see this is just the block with the valves. And I'm running a test here where I filled up the water jacket with water all the way to the top. And what I'm looking to see is if any of the water comes out these holes, because that tells me that the leak is below the top of the block and that there's some crack down in here. I'll even rotate the engine a few times with the crank just to exercise the valves to see if there's any water stuck in there. But I've done that once and nothing changed. So none of this water is coming out anywhere. You can see the water is up to the top all the way around. Even the bolt holes are full of water. So the other test I did is I took the long bolts in these 6 holes and I measured how far they need to go in, and then I added 1/8 of an inch to that, or a 1/16 at least, and drove them all in past that mark just to make sure none of them were bottoming out and fooling me on the torque. Like maybe they weren't really torquing the head and the gasket, maybe they were just bottoming out. So I ran that test, and every one of these bolt holes goes about 1/8 of an inch deeper than it needs to. And I didn't even account for the gasket. So the gasket takes up, you know, a 1/16 of an inch. So we're well within every single one of those bolts having plenty of depth to the threads, and there's no binding or bottoming out going on. So we're sort of left. I'm going to go eat lunch. And last time I went and ate lunch, after putting this thing back together, it started leaking. So I'm gonna go have some lunch and come back in an hour or so and see if any of this water level has changed. I suspect it will not. And I suspect that my head is the problem. And again, the head, there's nothing obviously wrong with it. It looks kind of bad. It's got some rust now, flash rust from the water that's been in there the last couple days. But there's no obvious cracks, and I don't know how to test this. There's no real way to fill it up with water and see if it runs out. So I'm thinking that it's probably warped and it's just not making a good seal with the gasket, and that's probably the problem. So I think what I'm going to do is get me a new head, and they're almost $300, a new one. I could also go to eBay, but then I'm not sure I'm getting one that's any better than this one, because you can't really tell there's anything wrong with this one. So I'm sure somebody on eBay parting one of these out isn't going to guarantee it, but I would think a purchased one at a shop would. The other option I have is the old tractor, the other Cub sitting out at the street, taking the head off of that. It's pretty rusted, and I have no idea what the history of that tractor is, and so I don't know why it's been sitting out for so many years and is in its rusted, dilapidated condition. I can only assume it wasn't running, and that's why it got parked somewhere. But I don't want to take the chance on that, and someday I'd like to restore that one. So rather than start scavenging from it now, maybe I'll just buy a new head for this one, a new head gasket, maybe even some new head bolts. But the head bolts seem to be in pretty good shape, so I'll probably not do that. So that's where we are, and it's not a very happy place. This tractor was supposed to be running right now, supposed to be driving it around, showing everybody how good I am at restoring things, but this hit the brick wall here, and I was pretty depressed the first day, but I think I've gotten past the disappointment and the depression part of it, and realize that there's, it's not incurable. It's difficult maybe if I have to rebuild the whole engine again, but chances are it's above the block. So that's what I'm going to depend on at this point. So I'll clean all this up, get me a new head, and see how things go. That's where I am at the moment. I'll just be thinking more about it.